Seemingly as a direct consequence of Sandy's having eaten bacon, ham, pork chops, and sausage, there was no containing the transformation of our lives. Rabbi Bengelsdorf was coming to dinner. Aunt Evelyn was bringing him. "Why us?" my father said to my mother. Dinner was over. Sandy was in his bed writing to Oren Mahoney, and I was alone with them in the living room, intent on seeing how my father was going to take the news that everything around us was moving at once. "She's my sister," said my mother, a touch belligerently. "He is her boss. I can't tell her no." "I can," he said. "You will do nothing of the sort." "Then explain why we deserve this great honor. The big shot has nothing more pressing than to come here." "Evelyn wants him to meet your son." "That's ridiculous. Your sister has always been ridiculous. My son is in the 8th grade at Chancellor Avenue School. He spent the summer pulling weeds. This is all ridiculous." "Herman, they're coming on Thursday night, and we're going to make them welcome. You may hate him, but he's not nobody." "I know that," he said impatiently. "That's why I hate him." When he walked about the house, now a copy of PM was constantly in his hands, either rolled up like a weapon, as though he were preparing, if called upon, to go to war himself, or turned back to a page where there was something he wanted to read aloud to my mother. He was perplexed on this particular evening as to why the Germans continued to advance so easily into Russia, and so, rattling the paper in exasperation, he all at once exclaimed, "Why don't those Russians fight? They have plans, why don't they use them? They have planes, why don't they use them? Why doesn't anybody over there put up a fight? Hitler walks into a country, crosses the border, and walks right in, and bingo, it's his. England, he announced, is the only country in Europe to stand up to that dog. He pounds away at those English cities every single night, and they just come back and keep on fighting him with the RAF. Thank God for the men of the RAF." "When is Hitler going to invade England?" I asked him. "Why doesn't he invade England now?" "That was part of the deal he made with Mr. Lindbergh up in Iceland. Lindbergh wants to be the savior of mankind," my father explained to me, "and negotiate the peace that ends the war, and so after Hitler takes Russia, and after he takes the Middle East, and after he takes everything else he could possibly want, Lindbergh will call a phony peace conference. The kind that's right up there, or the kind that's right up the Germans' alley. The Germans will be there, and the price for world peace and no German invasion of Great Britain will be installing in England an English fascist government, putting a fascist prime minister in Dowling Street. And when the English say no, then Hitler will invade, and all with the consent of our president, the peacemaker." "Is that what Walter Winchell says?" I asked, thinking that all he had explained to me was just too smart for him. "That's what I say," he told me, and probably that was true. The pressure of what was happening was accelerating everyone's education, my own included. But thank God for Walter Winchell. Without him, we'd be lost. He's the last person left on radio to speak out against those But thank God for Walter Winchell. Without him, we'd be lost. He's the last person left on radio to speak out against those dirty dogs. It's disgusting. It's worse than disgusting. Slowly but surely, there's nobody in America willing to speak out against Lindbergh's kissing Hitler's behind. "What about the Democrats?" I asked. "Son, don't ask me about the Democrats. I'm angry enough as it is." My mother had me help her set the table in the dining room on Thursday evening, and then sent me to my bedroom to change into my good clothes. Aunt Evelyn and Rabbi Bengelsdorf were to arrive at 7:45. At 7, 45 minutes later than we would ordinarily have finished eating in the kitchen, but 7 was the earliest the rabbi could manage to get to our house because of all his official duties. This was the very traitor whom my father usually so respectful of the Jewish clergy had accused aloud of making a stupid lying speech on behalf of Lindbergh at Madison Square Garden. The Jewish fake, according to Alvin, who guaranteed Roosevelt's defeat by koshering Lindbergh for the Goyim, and so it was puzzling to witness the lengths to which we were going to feed him. I was myself instructed beforehand not to use the fresh towels in the bathroom, or go anywhere near my father's armchair, which was for the rabbi to occupy before we ate dinner. First, we all sat stiffly in the living room while my father offered the rabbi a highball, or, if he preferred, a shot of schnapps, both of which Bengelsdorf declined in favor of a glass of tap water. "Newark has the best drinking water in the world," the rabbi said. and said it as he would say everything with deep consideration. Graciously he received the glass on a coaster from my mother, whom I could still recall back in October running from the radio in order not to have to hear him praise Lindbergh. "You have a most agreeable house," he told her. "Everything in its place, and everything placed perfectly. It bespeaks the love of order which I myself share. I see you have a penchant for the color green." "Forest green," said my mother, trying to smile, and trying to please, but speaking with difficulty and unable as yet to look his way. "You should take great pride in your lovely home. I am honored to be a guest here." The rabbi was quite tall, built on the order of Lindbergh, a thin, bald-headed man, in a dark three-piece suit, and gleaming black shoes. His erect posture alone seemed to me to express an allegiance to mankind's highest ideals. From the mellifluous southern accent I'd heard on the radio, I'd envisioned somebody looking far less severe, but just as his eyeglasses were intimidating in part because they were the owlish oval spectacles that pinched the nose to stay on his face, like the ones Roosevelt wore, and in part because the very fact that he wore them and examined you through them microscopically made it clear that he was not a man with whom to disagree. Yet when he spoke, his tone was warm, friendly, even confiding. I kept waiting for him to treat us with contempt or order us around, but all he did was talk in that accent, which wasn't at all like Sandy's, and so softly that at times you had to hold your breath to hear how learned he was. "You must be the boy," he said to Sandy, "who's made us all so proud." "I'm Sandy, sir," Sandy replied, flushing furiously. It was, to my mind, a brilliant retort to a question that another successful boy, trying to meet the sanctioned standard of modesty, might not have been able to handle with such dispatch. No, nothing could now undo Sandy, not with those muscles and that sun-bleached hair, and the abundance of pig he'd stashed away without asking permission of anyone. "And what was it like," the rabbi asked, "to work there in the Kentucky fields under the burning sun?" He said work for work, and burning for burning, and there for there, and pronounced Kentucky as if it was spelled and not as Sandy now did, as though the first three letters were K-I-N. "I learned a lot, sir. I learned a lot about my country." Aunt Evelyn visibly approved, as well she might have, since on the phone the evening before she'd fitted him out with the answer to just such a question, since she had always to be superior to my father. There could be no greater delight than to shape the existence of his older son right in front of his nose. "You are on a tobacco farm, your Aunt Evelyn tells me." "Yes, sir. White burley tobacco." "Did you know, Sandy, that tobacco was the economic foundation of the first permanent English settlement in America at Jamestown in Virginia?" "I didn't," he admitted, but added, "though I'm not surprised to hear it." And in a flash the worst was over. "Many mishaps beset the Jamestown pioneers," the rabbi told him, "but what saved them from